What makes a city truly livable? It is not only the skyline or the infrastructure. It is how people live and connect every day. Safe streets, clean water, reliable transport, affordable energy, and digital connectivity. In the Philippines, cities are our economic engines. They create most of the nation's jobs, attract investments, and drive innovation. By 2050, most Filipinos will live in cities. The urgent question is, that is the mission of Liveable Cities Philippines. We bring leaders together, mayors, government agencies, businesses, and civic partners to share solutions that work. Through our labs, city leaders exchange practical approaches on transport, energy, waste, water, and governance. Each session sparks partnerships, inspires actions, and creates models that our cities can adopt and scale. We also strengthen governance with better data. The Bayan eHub is our geospatial platform that equips local leaders with vital information, mapping communities, resources, and infrastructure. Through this, cities can plan smarter, deliver services faster, and respond better to challenges. Competitiveness is at the heart of our work. Cities that are easier to do business in, better connected, and more energy secure become magnets for investment. They create jobs, open markets, and improve quality of life for their citizens. This is why Liveable Cities works with partners to track reforms, cut red tape, and raise the bar for performance. Liveable Cities Philippines is a platform for action, a network, a movement. We convene, equip, measure, and scale what works so every Filipino feels the difference in daily life. Together, let us build competitive, connected, and resilient cities, the true engines of our nation's progress.
Together, let's embark on this journey to empower our cities and shape a brighter future.
Data is always moving. How people think, feel, and behave change constantly, so our understanding needs to shift too, continuously evolving to keep you ahead. Inquiro is your window to entire audience landscapes and deeper consumer understanding, giving you quick insights, giving you actionable insights, giving you real-time insights on demand. It's a powerful platform that enriches your mastery of the market. The 360 Intelligence Dashboard and Audience Builder lets you explore a holistic overview and hone in on a specific audience. With the Credibility Scoring API, you can unlock your consumers' behavior through omni-channel touchpoints and measure their overall trustworthiness. Access insights into the Philippine population with precise market analytics using MarketScan. Beyond deepening your understanding, Inquiro amplifies your growth. Widen your scope, tap into countless profiles, and multiply your reach using Acquisition Suite. With Inquiro, you have a secure, easy-to-use platform. One platform, unlimited reach. One platform, all the answers. One platform, multiple insights. Learn more at info@inquiro.ph.
Nak, kaya pa? Okay po.
Nak, may pamerienda tayo dun, ha? Mahusay, anak. Nak, ikaw munang bahala dito.
Ako po?
Yung investors, close the deal. I trust you.
When the moment demands it, the only path forward is to choose courage.
Sir. This is too inefficient. I'm sure there's a better way.
Not just to face what's in front of you, but to transform.
Hi, sir. Nice to meet you. Anna from Glow Business.
It's the decision to grow, to push beyond limits, and to reshape your own potential. It's choosing not just to endure, but to turn challenges into progress. Doubt into determination, and fear into fuel.
Nak?
Kamusta?
Pa, you're supposed to be resting.
Something wrong at the plant?
Kakayanin naman po. I've got a lot of help behind me.
That's good.
Oh, Iho,
Sir,
congratulations.
thank you so much, sir.
Your digital transformation will set us up for years to come.
When the moment arrives, choose to rise above. Choose the courage to transform with Globe Business.
For our university and our community, flooding from storms and sea level rise is literally an existential threat. And that's our university football stadium and our downtown area with sea level projected, I think, out to the year 2100. It's really incumbent upon us to focus our attention and our efforts on using our skills, geospatial technology, visualizations, mapping, modeling, to help our community address these risks that we're facing. It's so important talking about policy and rulemaking because the visualizations are they can be so impactful and persuasive, but it really requires that policy and change in law to affect change in the community. What we had historically heard from a lot of the planners in our region is that much of the information on flooding in particular in the area was anecdotal. And that's great information, but it's not actionable data. And our goal has been increasingly to use sensors and modeling to try to paint that picture of what the future looks like. And I think using these types of tools and visualizations allows planners to really hone in on those critical areas and create effective policy rather than policy that is informed just by that anecdotal information.
mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
Kayang magiliw, helas ng sinakalan, alam ng puso, sa titik mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, kuya ka ng magiting, sa mandulupin, di ka pasisingil, sa dagatang tutok sa simoy at sa langit mong bangaw, ay hinatang tula, kawin sa pagkayang minamahal. Ang isang ng matawad mo'y tagumpay na naghihingi, ang bituin at araw niya kailan pamay di maghihingi. Luman ang araw ng walang pagsinta, buhay langit sa piling mo. Ang inigaya na pagkay mga amin, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Please do not forget to mute it after speaking. For guests joining via Zoom, please put your phone on silent. This lab will be recorded for documentation purposes. It is also available on our Facebook page. For Zoom and Facebook participants, please type in your questions via the chat box or the comment section. Vote for questions you like by clicking on the thumbs up icon. To help us improve our labs, please answer the feedback form. You may request for a certificate of attendance by answering the form. Thank you everyone for joining us for our 5th Livable Cities Lab of the year. We are excited to have you here as we explore and discuss how we can shape and build our communities that efficiently adapt to the extensive effects of climate change through sustainable urban planning. To officially kick off today's event, it is my privilege to introduce Mr. Guillermo M, Chairman of the Liveable Cities Philippines and Chairman of the Rizalino S. Navarro Policy Center for Competitiveness at the Asian Institute of Management. Please join me in giving him a warm welcome as he shares his opening remarks.
Thank you, Migs, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Well, first of all, I'd like to welcome our speakers and guests and participants joining us here at the Aboitiz Tech Space at the Asian Institute of Management, and those of you joining us via Zoom and Facebook. Thank you for being here with us today. This lab is made possible through our partnership with the League of Cities of the Philippines, Globe Telecom, and Coca-Cola Philippines. So here we are on the favorite topic of the day. And I was just telling a few friends here that every day when I listen to what's going on in the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee hearings, I'm just amazed at the level of information and brazenness that is being exhibited by the perpetrators. It's just, we used to talk about millions, now we talk about billions, now we're talking trillions. It's absolutely crazy. So we've been fixated on flood control projects and the flood control scandal, whether real, imagined, incomplete, or ghost projects. And yet the floodwaters we're wading through are very real. Stranded commuters, submerged homes, disrupted work and school. These scenes remind us that flooding is not a distant threat. It is here, It is constant, and it is exhausting our people's patience. In July alone, 3 tropical cyclones, Krising, Dante, and Emong, affected 8.2 million Filipinos. Damage to public infrastructure has reached over 9 billion pesos. And what is most alarming is that many of the hardest hit structures were in areas supposedly protected by flood control projects themselves. The level of corruption surrounding these projects has been staggering. In Bulacan, auditors found over 341 million worth of projects that were either substandard or overpriced. And now yesterday, we hear that not only all flood control projects, but all infrastructure in Bulacan was designed and built to be substandard. Just let that sink in. Designed and built to be substandard. We're talking of schools, other public infrastructure, roads, clinics, anything public built by DPWH, designed and built to be substandard. Okay. Another 389 million in so-called dikes turned out to be ghost projects, recorded on paper but missing on the ground. In Lucena, a newly built dike collapsed after being reinforced with poor materials. In Oriental Mindoro, barriers are built with sheet piles 1/4 the required length. And the list goes on and on and on, probably through every district engineering office of DPWH and every congressional district funded by our Congress. All of this and more perpetrated by an unholy alliance of DPWH, senators, congressmen, contractors, and the Commission on Audit. These are not isolated. Whistleblowers have spoken of congressmen and officials demanding 25% kickbacks. Some estimate that as much as half of flood control projects over the past 15 years never made it to the ground. Since 2022, 545 billion pesos in spending is now under review. And now, to add insult to injury, there's a mad rush to destroy very real papers for ghost projects in a bid to cover it all up. The government has begun to act. The Ombudsman has suspended DPWH officials, and the Independent Commission for Infrastructure was created this month to investigate. A Senate Blue Ribbon Committee has started investigations, but Filipinos are asking for more than just probes. They are demanding justice, accountability, and lasting solutions. This year's theme, Sustained Possibility, is about meeting that demand. It's about moving away from the narrow idea of flood control and towards resilience. Cities designed to absorb, adapt, and recover. It is about governance that protects lives instead of wasting resources. Our challenge is now clear. Traditional dikes and dredging will not save us if projects remain riddled with corruption or built with shortcuts. With climate change threatening 300 billion pesos in damages every year, we need real solutions. Solutions based on nature-based designs, appropriate technology, and appropriate engineering, and transparent systems that deliver real protection. This lab is part of that effort. It is where public demand meets expert insight. From protest, we move to proposals. From broken promises, we build practical solutions. And from ghost projects, we'd like to refer to real projects. So today's speakers are really the complete opposite of what we've seen outside, from substandard projects, ghost projects, incomplete projects, to very real ideas of what can be designed and what can be built from a practical point of view. And we're also going to show through data what the impact is of floods and how they can be mapped out easily. So we have an exceptional panel of experts today. They'll be properly introduced, but let me just run through them quickly. Nathaniel von Einsiedel, Chairman and Principal Urban Planner of CONCEP INC. Paulo Alcazaren, Architect and Urban Planner. Jonathan Abalos, Director of the Geospatial Data Products and Services Department of Geodata Systems Technologies. And John Gabriel Abarquez, Business Development Manager of Inquiro. So that's going to be the focus of today's discussion, from ghost projects to real projects. And at this point, let me turn over to Yenny Gonzales, our Project Director, to introduce our panelists.
Thank you, Bill. To begin our lab today, let me call on our first speaker, Nathaniel von Einsiedel, Chairman and Principal Urban Planner of CONCEP INC, as a distinguished architect and urban planner. With a career spanning from his beginnings as a draftsman in Quezon City to serving as the first commissioner for planning of Metro Manila and the regional director for Asia Pacific of the United Nations Urban Management Program, Nathaniel von Einsiedel has pioneered ecosystem-based planning and sustainable urban development. His acclaimed work includes the Makati Redevelopment Plan, the Subic Freeport Master Plan, and the Santa Ana Lucia Eco Township in Palawan, for which he has been recognized as an outstanding environmental planner and a UP Distinguished Lifetime Achievement Awardee. Today, he will share his insights on rethinking flood management, where he will examine the gaps in our national policies and make a powerful case for shifting from traditional flood control to integrated water-sensitive urban planning to build true resilience. Let us all welcome Architect Yenny von Einsiedel.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon. Okay. I particularly chose this photo to demonstrate the situation we're in, where people are forced to adapt to what's happening. Okay. Well, we know, the Philippines is composed of a lot of islands, and we have a very long coastline, and therefore we are prone to sea level rise, storm surge, and coastal flooding. Of our total number of towns and cities, almost 60% are coastal. And also, we have 20 major river basins. 424 of these are principal river basins. We have 72 lakes. And almost all of this overflow during the rainy season. With the average of 20 typhoons a year, about 11 of which hit land, there's over 2,000 millimeters of rainfall every year. Okay. Yet, we don't have a national integrated flood management policy master plan. What we have is a hodgepodge of water-related policies and plans and offices. So I've listed them down here. Okay. And what is interesting, and this is something that's at the bottom of the list, is the River Basic Control Office under the DENR. There are 18 river basin development councils in the Philippines, but for some reason, they've never convened. So the existing situation is described very adequately as being fragmented, inadequate, and lacking in interjurisdictional collaboration. Okay. Now, what is the traditional approach? It's gray infrastructure, reservoir, levees, flood walls, floodgates, seawalls, etc. The problem is that, first, these are very expensive, but as we all have been hearing over the past few days, very profitable for some people. But these major infrastructure projects, they disturb the land and they disrupt the natural flow of water. When you change the route of a river, you hasten the flow. And once the speed of water accelerates, it erodes the sides of it. Okay. Now, also, infrastructure requires regular maintenance. And the Philippine government is not very well known for exercising that. Okay. What is alarming is that it creates a false sense of security. And people, when they see or hear that flood control projects are done, they think they're safe. But as we know, they're not. So we need to rethink the existing approach to flood management and to shift from the traditional flood control mindset to that of a water-sensitive urban planning and land management approach. The two things that are at the forefront of mitigating flood hazards is one, floodplains and stormwater management. So these are the things I'd like to focus on. But we need to understand that every region in the Philippines has its own hydrological cycle. Okay. We know that every rainy season, there's going to be a lot of rain and that rivers are going to flood. And when they flood, we have these different kinds of flooding, the riverine flooding, coastal flooding because of storm surge, and shallow flooding. I think we also need to understand that flooding is a natural occurrence. Every now and then, rivers and creeks will overflow their banks and inundate the adjacent areas. These adjacent areas are known as floodplains, and they will store temporarily the excess water. Now, flood damage occurs only when human beings interfere with the natural flooding process by one, altering the water course. For example, constructing something like the Maggahan floodway, or developing areas in the upstream of the watershed and cutting down forests in the mountains. And then, of course, building in the floodplain itself. So let me go into floodplain management. The goal here is not to prohibit the development in floodplains, because a lot of our towns and cities are actually built on floodplains. So the idea is to guide the development in such a way that it will lessen the economic losses and social disruption caused by flooding events. Now, some of the concepts with floodplain management. Okay, this diagram shows what is a floodplain, and it is comprised of the floodway and then the flood fringe on each side. Then it also has what is known as the base flood, which is sometimes referred to as the 100-year flood, which has a 1% chance of occurring in a given year. Now, Ondoy and Yolanda generated floods that can be considered the base floods. Now, it's supposed to be used as the standard when engineers design flood infrastructure, okay? The problem is that this is not properly enforced. Okay. But some of the concepts here is that, for example, no development should be permitted in the floodway. Okay, that's pretty obvious. And the water code says that there should be an easement of, in urban areas, 3 meters on each side of a river. But when you are in a floodplain, 3 meters is not going to be enough. Now, we have rules about the subdivisions required to have their own drainage plans. The problem is that the drainage plans of subdivisions are limited only to the boundary of the subdivision, and they don't bother to connect to where the outfalls are, which is an LGU responsibility. Okay. Now, another problem is the alteration of the water course, because this should not be allowed. In fact, the simple tambak, when property owners buy a lot and it's supposed to be depressed, the traditional approach is tambakan mo. But you're actually just transferring the flood water to the area outside your property. If you do have a flood management policy, that should not be allowed, or it can be allowed, but you have to get a permit. You have to show that it will not alter the natural flow of water. Now, when you have a flood fringe, development can be permitted, but it should be subject to regulations. Now, let me go into stormwater management. When rainwater falls, okay, it falls on the roof of buildings, it goes into gutters, downspouts, and then onto the drainage system into the streets. Okay. Now, rural areas by nature are typically open and have a lot of pervious areas, open space that can absorb rainwater. But urban areas where you have a lot of roofs and you have a lot of roads which cannot absorb rainwater, the rainwater is conducted through culverts and they're conducted to the lowest areas and they cause flash floods. Most of our towns and cities have conventional drainage systems that are limited mainly to the poblacion areas. Okay? And many of them, or most of them actually, have not considered the additional volume of water caused by climate change. Okay? There is a template that they follow based on the DSHUD, Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development guidelines, but they don't really translate this into stormwater management systems. And most LGUs rely on DPWH to do the flood control plans for their jurisdictions. Very often, when there's heavy rains, the existing drainage systems are easily overwhelmed. Okay. And the gray infrastructure does not really solve the problem because they're designed much lower than what the heavy rains produce. And therefore, there is now an increasing interest in the design of stormwater management systems. They continue to function well into the future. And this includes, for example, the adoption of nature-based solutions, which Paulo will be explaining after this. Okay, so we need to understand that stormwater management systems are location-specific. And therefore, this places a very big responsibility on LGUs. Okay, because DPWH works at the regional and provincial level, but it needs to be brought down further down to the towns and cities. Now, together with nature-based solutions are also green stormwater infrastructure. Now, what are the examples of floodplain stormwater management systems? One is Australia's water-sensitive urban design. Okay. It is part of an overall urban strategy. It integrates urban water cycle management with urban planning and design. And the aim is mimicking the natural systems. I showed you earlier the hydraulic cycle. It tries to replicate that. Okay. It offers an alternative to the traditional gray infrastructure approach. And the strategy is to act at the source. So where the water falls, you try and contain it there instead of allowing it to flow down into the downstream and cause flash floods. Another very popular example is the Sponge Cities program of China. in China, this particular program recognizes that rapid urbanization combined with climate change is increasing the frequency and severity of extreme weather events. So they have adopted this program or this approach where they use nature-based solutions. Another example is the United Kingdom's sustainable drainage system. Very similar to the Australian approach, similar also to the China approach. This is actually, in the case of the UK, has become a law, okay? And it requires all kinds of developments, all private developments and all government developments to adopt the standards that they have prescribed under this system. Now, the fourth example is the low impact development in the US. Again, it's similar. The picture shows here a rain garden. Okay, Paulo is going to explain this further in his presentation. Okay. Now, what is interesting with LID in the US compared to China is that this relies on smaller scale site-specific solutions. Yung China kasi like yung lagoon, sponge lagoon, these are huge areas which you can do in China because the government owns much of the land or all of the land. No, I can't see it being done in Metro Manila, you know, unless we get the money from, anyway. So these are the four examples, and there are four common features of these four examples. It mimics the natural location-specific hydrological regime, as I mentioned. It adopts nature-based solutions, which can be combined actually with gray infrastructure where it is required. Okay? And it also addresses three objectives simultaneously. Water scarcity, because you can use the impounding lagoon for water supply. Okay? And it also addresses flooding, and it also addresses water pollution because of the infiltration that it encourages. It also uses multifunctional landscapes, like, for example, a playground can serve as a floodwater impounding lagoon. So when it's raining very hard, I mean, children are not going to play in the playground. So that playground can be used as a floodwater detention pond. Now, just to conclude, a number of things moving forward. We need to accept that there's going to be uncertainty because of climate change. So we need, for those of you who may be into urban planning, the use of scenario planning. Okay. Also thinking of the system scale, the ridge to reef, from the mountains all the way down to the coastal areas. The use of multifunctional landscapes, as I mentioned, public school playgrounds can be retrofitted to serve as multifunctional stormwater parks. The prioritization of green open space that can absorb rainwater rather than cementing and doing all of this huge parking lots that cannot absorb rainwater. Another one is scaling up climate change adaptation investments. For example, the introduction, like what they've done in BGC, of having the underground cistern. And also the risk-informed planning in new areas where it is possible to still develop large rainwater detention ponds. And very importantly, the last point is to transform the policy, regulation, engineering, construction nexus, which has produced the mindset that gray infrastructure will solve the flooding problem. Okay, it's taught in our College of Engineering. That's what the engineers are taught. So that's what DPWH does and all the contractors. So our experience with existing drainage infrastructure is that they have largely been inadequate. And this is proven by the fact that we've been experiencing frequent and more severe flooding. Now, there are situations where green infrastructure, nature-based solutions will not solve the flooding problem. They will still need to be integrated systematically with gray infrastructure. Okay, that's why it's important to study the hydrological regime of particular places and do a flood modeling to be able to determine what kind of solution you need. Okay, this is, I think, what we're seeing in all of the news that we've been getting this last few days, that this is not being done. If we are to solve the problem of flooding, we need to understand that this is a natural occurrence and that we need to study the location, the specific conditions of the place where we need to come up with a floodplain management system and a stormwater management system. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sir Dinky. What strikes me most about your presentation is that how much we lose because of corruption and how our flood management efforts are quite fragmented, as you said. We have many plans and offices, but no single integrated strategy to guide them until we shift from piecemeal projects to a true national framework that brings together policy, planning, and local action. We will stay vulnerable. The challenge is not just engineering, but honest leadership that we lack and effective coordination that we sorely need. Am I correct? If you have any questions, just a reminder, if you have any questions for our online audience, please feel free to use the Q&A box in Zoom or the comments in our Facebook Live so we can answer them during the panel discussion later. Our next speaker continues this conversation by showing us what his integrated nature-based approach looks like on ground. He is a renowned environmental planner, landscape architect, and the head of PGAA Creative Design. With a career spanning projects across 12 countries in Asia, including a long tenure as a managing director in Singapore, Paulo brings a wealth of international expertise to the Philippines. He is a recipient of numerous awards for urban design and landscape architecture, including the prestigious CCP Award para sa Sining Award. A passionate advocate for green cities and heritage conservation, he is also a prolific writer who regularly shares his insights on urbanism through his column in the Philippine Star, championing the vital cause of bringing back open spaces for our people. He's here to show us how design and resilience can coexist with his presentation on designing with nature, green infrastructure, and public spaces for flood-resilient cities. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Paulo Alcazaren.
Thank you, Yenny. Good afternoon, Bill. Thank you for inviting me again. Good afternoon, everyone. First, of course, the honorific of architect. I'm actually a landscape architect and an environmental planner or planner. Although my background is also in building architecture, I'm licensed and registered as a landscape architect. No, I'm not a gardener, that's a different profession, and a planner. So if for those of you following social media today, the architects released a statement against the use of the word architect because they feel that it's too negative, but then that's it's generic. But in any case, I prefer to be addressed as Mr. Paulo Alcazaren, and I am a landscape architect and environmental planner. But let's get on with it. So designing with nature, green infrastructure, and public spaces for flood resilient cities. A very long title, but very quickly, this shows you what could be done. The one on the left is Iloilo, and what is the situation in Metro Manila, which is the Pasig River. So this is the reality we live in, as intimated by Dinky. All of our metro areas are filled with built environment or structures and concrete everywhere. And you can see there's very little green open space. Inadequate planning, including inadequate planning of infrastructure, obvious lack of open green space. And of course, because of the fractured governance, as mentioned again by Dinky, and corruption, we are faced with perennial flooding and other urban problems like transport inadequacies. The same is true with Cebu. So multiply this in various degrees of intensity in all of the 150s or so cities and 1,500 towns in the whole of the Philippines. 6 out of 10 Filipinos live in towns or cities. That's why most of our problems are urban. And that's where most of the flood waters go anyway, as we can see in a bit. This is why it floods. Very simple. I think he had a very scientific diagram. I had a very quick 5-minute drawing that shows you that where DPWH is spending the trillions of money only here in the bottom portion, when really we should be spending the money here, up here, where we've cut down all the trees and all of the water is flooding down. And I've talked to officials of the DNR, and they said all of these things that they're putting here, they don't work. That's why it's flooding. Very simple. So this is the situation. We've lost our forest cover. That's how we were in 1949, and this is how we are today. All of this because of greed. Actually, it all boils down to greed of a certain few. Greed to cut all of our forests, and so we don't have the forest. All of the water comes from the 16 major river systems. Get the water from the stormwater or the rainwater that falls on the forest and the uplands. It doesn't mean that we didn't plan for it. This is the detail of the 1941. That's how many years ago? 80, 60, 70, 85 years ago, when they did the first plan for Quezon City, the planners, and one of the planners was a landscape architect named Louis Croft, put in easements of 50 to 100 meters on either side of the creeks and rivers. This is Quezon City. So all of those green areas are easements of the waterways. They did not follow this. That's why it floods in Quezon City. That's why it floods everywhere else. It's because they did not listen to nature-based solutions 80 years ago. So this is what, and I travel all over the Philippines in the last 20 years. Almost all of the islands I've seen and all of the rivers I've seen. I've seen maybe 15 out of the 18 river basins. This is what I see all the time, which is incomplete river dikes and levees. And they're left like that for years, so it doesn't work, and the edges scour. So it actually adds to, if you build it and that's the solution, it has to be from the top to the bottom. So the DPWH fetish is to line all of the 18 major river systems from top to bottom. But this does not work. And these are the floodplains, which should be left as the floodplain. If we have any intervention, because it will take generations to replant the forest, there are interventions that use gray and a mix of NBS down at where the towns and cities are. So this is when we were called, Dinky and I were called with a group of PIEP for Tacloban. One of the things that we found, and these are interventions at the local LGU level and at the ground levels, ground zero of these problems. Although this problem was storm surge, is that we propose that they put up an ordinance. Alam niyo yung fire escape, di ba? Fire escape, bababa ka from a burning building. what we need in the Philippines is flood escape. That means on the top of all of the buildings, there's enough space for all of the residents. If they had this in Tacloban, we would have saved thousands of lives because there was not enough time to go up to the higher ground that was needed. So flood escape stairs. So this is something I posted after Ondoy, although in jest. But of course, everything starts with a joke. It's actually very serious. And we are actually proposing this for flood-prone cities like Naga, that the barangay halls really be elevated. We used to build all of our vernacular architecture anyway on stilts, right? But we've forgotten that. So of course, it would help if they could land on top with a helicopter. But all the helicopters are owned by Congressman Saldi. Maybe we can get all of his, ilan ba yan? 11 airplanes and helicopters. 40? He has a whole fleet. Sponge cities. I suggested this again in jest after Ondoy, but it's a real intervention that we can absorb. At the ground zero, we can have SpongeBob absorb all of the waters until such time as the old culverts can accommodate the water. But this is the reality. That's SpongeBob in BGC. Secretary Babe Simpson's underneath that is this huge cistern. That's why it doesn't flood in BGC. So we can adopt this at the ground zero areas like the towns and cities at the bottom of the slopes, diba? So there are 5 or 6 proprietary systems that you can use other than just plain concrete cisterns, which take a while. These modular systems that they make in Singapore and Malaysia can be installed very quickly. So underneath, say, a tennis court or a football field or a parking lot, you can put this modular high impact, high strength plastic modules that will absorb the water, and you can backfill and cover this up very quickly. So you don't have to wait for the concrete to set as in a cistern for this to be effective. We're proposing this in several LGUs that we're involved with. I lived in Singapore for 12 years, and two of those years I worked as urban design liaison for the Ministry of National Development. Orchard Road, that's why you have the wide pedestrian way, is that it used to flood in Orchard Road 50 years ago. And their first intervention was hard infrastructure. Underneath that walkway is a very big culvert. That's why it's that wide. That's why it doesn't flood in Orchard Road. But of course, that caught up with them a few years ago, and it started to flood again because of the more building in Singapore led to a lot of the stormwater not going into the drainage system. So what they did was this. This is Bishan Ang Mo Kio Park, which used to be the one on top. Again, hard gray infrastructure. And what they did is to demolish all of that and turn it into green. And this had the better absorptive qualities that would sponge up all of the excess water in this park. And it stopped flooding again in Orchard Road. This is north of Orchard Road. But this is the strategy that they're now taking with in Singapore. All of their canals, they're starting to convert them to green. In Japan, their waterways, they used to also line them with concrete. Now, a lot of them, they use cocoa logs, which is cocoa coir wrapped into logs and pre-planted to vertebrates. So the plant roots will establish themselves in 1 year or 2 year cycle. It's stronger than concrete. And where do the Japanese get the cocoa coir? The Philippines, of course. So that's Bishan Ang Mo Kio. So when it floods, a lot of the water stays there just for a while. Of course, when it rains, you don't use the park while it's raining, of course. So we're doing this a few years ago. Dinky and I were involved with this. This is the largest. I'm sorry. This is San Fernando. I'm sorry, I missed a slide. I was supposed to show the slide of the Central Park in Clark Green City, which is 48 hectares.
New Clark City, the 48-hectare Central Park, which is the same geometry as this, and has about the same percentage of water areas. This private development in Capital Town. This is Mega World. So private developers know that they have to sponge up all of their floodwater. So Ayala is doing it in their larger townships. Mega World is doing this, and we designed 2 of their townships with detention ponds. The one in Clark is 48-hectare park. 20 hectares of it is a detention lake. So this is proof of concept. We're actually doing this. It's already being done, as you can see. So it's already a reality, which is being practiced in the private sector at much less cost, of course, than DPWH. So this is another one in Cavite for Mega World also, which we're also building. Again, a lot of area. So it can be done. It is being done. We should be doing it all the time. So you can see it's already being constructed. It can be done and at a reasonable cost compared to the damage that will ensue if we don't. This is another proof of concept. The NBS that Dinky had shown for bringing back natural processes. Balabag, this is, if you can see this, the mall. So Balabag used to be a wetland, but of course, it's now urbanized. And before we fixed it, this was full of commercial establishments. They little by little they had claimed the original wetlands. So when the only good thing that Duterte ever did was to shut down Boracay, and then we recovered the original wetlands. Of course, it took us a year to get rid of the structures here because they were all relatives of the barangay captain. So, but we were able to bring back the function of the wetlands to absorb rainwater. But additionally, we had areas around here which we designed for rain gardens. So we designed the rain gardens. This is what landscape architects do. We do the landscape design for the planting areas, provided the sections for the engineers to follow, which essentially absorbs stormwater from the street before it flows into the wetland. And these are the planting we use. It's a mix of porous material as well as softscape or planting. Again, proof of concept, it can be done. Well, one of the reasons it was done was because this Balabag Wetland Park was sponsored by Aboitiz Foundation. So it didn't go through DPWH, although we coordinated with DPWH Region 6 to do the other interventions for the improvement of the Spine Road. So these are pictures of what it is. Unfortunately, the last time I visited, because this was turned over to the LGU, it's again falling to disrepair because, like Dinky said, maintenance is not in the vocabulary of our government. The only thing they maintain is their bank accounts. But let me go. So we are proposing this for the other, this is again small interventions, but necessary. Rizal Memorial flooded 3 weeks ago during one of the, I forget which typhoon it was. And so our poor athletes couldn't use any of the play fields or even facilities. So this is what we're proposing. So they also have a problem with parking, and the streets are too wide. They're not used anyway for traffic. Most of the traffic is here. So we're reclaiming the front area. We're putting a plaza, but underneath the plaza is a cistern. We're also eventually going to use one of the proprietary systems underneath the football field, but that will take some scheduling because they're used all the time. But we can do this. In fact, there are a lot of institutional compounds and complexes that where we can put the cisterns or one of the proprietary systems that we alluded to. So this is This is Rizal Memorial. This is SM. You got it all, except they don't have flood control. They have the green roofs, no? So we could do this, and underneath that is this. It can be done. So Friday, I and the chairman of the Philippine Sports Commission, we have a meeting with Mayor Isko because this is in his jurisdiction, and hopefully we also have DPWH, NCR over there, although I think the guy is suspended now for NCR. Okay, so one of the LGUs we're working with, Dingy and myself, is Naga City. So this is something I posted 15 years ago, which is rainwater harvesting. Actually, there's a law which is never followed that we have to, if every residence or every structure, we harvest the water and keep them in even recycled barrels. That would alleviate the burden on our overburdened and ill-maintained culverts. And we're actually proposing it for Naga, and that's the pilot installation done at almost no cost. Well, there is some cost, but definitely not trillions of pesos. So Mayor Lenny is trying to implement this. The only problem with the informal settlers' roofs are most of them don't have gutters. Walang alulud eh. So, but this can be installed in all of the civic structures and private residences. So it still will help. But proof of concept, it can be done. The other problem with Naga, that's Mount Isarog there at the bridge. That's where all of the storm water comes from. That's the uphill. I'm sorry, Mahar Lagmay says that we should call it the Isarog volcano. It's actually still a volcano. But when it flooded very heavily last year, the flood water reached up to the second level here. But the Coliseum was their refuge. And the problem was the design of the toilets was at the ground floor. So it was flooded. All the refugees had no toilets. You can imagine where they had to go relieve themselves. So the proposal, which has been approved, it's now funded, it's undergoing, pushed by Mayor Lenny, is the construction of a cistern and elevated toilets and showers, because we will have to live with the fact until she can implement a flood control project for the entire region in association with the other LGUs, because she cannot do it alone. The flood waters will not stop from one LGU jurisdiction. They do not recognize political boundaries. So they have to still rely on this, things like this. So what we did when we conducted a stakeholder workshop with Mayor Lenny and people from Naga, is one of the tools we used, which was very useful, was to create a 3D topographical map, which is showing from the Mount Isarog all the way down to Naga. Naga is at the bottom, and we overlaid Project NOAA, Mahar Lagmay's Project NOAA mapping onto the map itself. So the red is the deepest waters. It's of course at the bottom and beside the rivers where it overflowed. So this is the first time that a lot of the stakeholders, and Ma'am Lenny for one, had seen a very easily readable representation of where the flood waters come and where we have to put the detention basins that is required to mitigate this. So this is the recommended site based on the science and the data. And this is going to use NBS. When we were doing the stakeholder workshop, the DPWH had no information for us, and then we found out afterwards that they were still trying to implement a fully gray infrastructure diversion, which will not work. And again, they really had to sit down with the LGUs as well as the regional development councils. Apparently, they don't do that because their marching orders are from their bosses, and their bosses have their own agenda, as we know today. So the other thing is parks and open space. Once you have these interventions, you can green them up. This is what Senator Delon showed us over 12 years ago, the Dyke Road, but it was gray. And what we did was to green it up to help make it more usable, as well as to add absorptive capacity for all of the rainwater. And landscape is really the easiest way to do this. And this is what we came up with. It's now 9 kilometers, the longest linear park in the Philippines, and proof that it can be done. It can be done at minimal cost. Very quickly, that's Iloilo. And additionally, all of the 6 plazas we've done to improve the greening and absorptive quality, as well as provide recreational spaces very quickly. And this can all be done at a minimal cost. And this by the river, the provincial capital also, we've recovered a lot of spaces. The parking that used to occupy all of this, we made it more efficient, and that yielded 2 additional parks. And the other thing is that right beside the river, we also found that this is an old provincial jail, and this was redone, and it's now this, which is a museum. So there are things that we can do at the scale of the LGU and the river, Pasig River Esplanade. Unfortunately, we're stuck in Intramuros. This is the master plan that we prepared, again, to provide a 25-kilometer esplanade and linear park. But it's stalled a bit for certain reasons that I don't know. So we're doing work for Pasig and Taguig at the moment at the other end, because the actual Pasig River Interagency Commission is preoccupied with the front area. So we can turn things like this very quickly into usable areas with more greenery. That's by the Jones Bridge and Ayala Bridge. Last few slides, and then other interventions like the Guadalupe area, we can turn it. This is just proposals. We don't, I mean, this is just a few 100 million. And along Guadalupe, that's the old PNR easement. Oh, what happened? It jumped back. I'm sorry. All of this can be done. My estimate of the projected cost of the 25 kilometers, that's actually 50 kilometers of linear park, is only 4.5 billion, which is cheap. I mean, that's just the cost of one of the limousines of the Discayas, I think. So this is what we could have. If we focus on NBS, nature-based solutions, not just gray infrastructure, we can have a sustainable outlook for our problems. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sir Paulo, for that very spirited presentation. You're also highlighting that flooding is also an urban design issue. Decades of unchecked development, lost forests, and blocked waterways have left cities exposed. You gave examples from sponge parks in Singapore to wetland grain gardens in Boracay, prove that nature-based solutions can be beautiful, practical, and life-saving. So green spaces are not just amenities or beautiful, they are vital infrastructure for resilience. So our next speaker brings a critical technological lens to this discussion. He is the director of the Geospatial Data Products and Services Department at Geodata Systems Technologies, the premier provider of smart mapping and spatial analytics solutions and the sole distributor of S3's ArcGIS in the Philippines. He leads a team of GIS professionals focused on providing geospatial data services like data production and conversion to help organizations maximize the value of their systems. His team also advocates for the growing role of imagery and remote sensing using satellites and drones to deliver next-level insights through reality mapping and geo-AI. A part-time faculty member of the University of Asia and the Pacific for over 9 years, he pioneered the use of statistical software in graduate economics courses. He holds a Master of Science in Public Policy and Management with a specialization in Digital Transformation and Analytics from Carnegie Mellon University, Australia, graduating with highest distinction. He is here to discuss leveraging geospatial intelligence for flood resilience. Please help me in welcoming Mr. Jonathan Abalos.
Right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here in the venue and in Zoom. So I was afraid that when I got introduced, I will only have one heart or one clap. And that was my wife. So thankfully, I saw some few claps. So thank you very much for the heart and the... Okay, now I'm getting some love. Good afternoon to all. It's a privilege to join you today. This Livable Cities Lab, where we come together to share good practices, spark innovation, harness technology, and foster new partnerships for more sustainable and resilient cities. So this afternoon, I'd like to share with you how location intelligence and AI can empower us to fostering flood resilience as we align with our theme of sustain plus ability. So I want to start off with this particular scene. I'm sure it is a very familiar scene for you. This was last August 30th in Quezon City. So it's between Mother Ignacia and Summer Streets, or Summer Street, yeah, Mother Ignacia Avenue and Summer. So one afternoon, QC experienced one of its most severe flooding incidents in recent years. So in less than an hour, so we've seen groundbreaking levels of rainfall. This is about, well, some say it's 120 millimeters per hour, some 130 millimeters per hour. Pag-asa's official is around 100 millimeters per hour. But what's important to note is that during this particular hour, it happened in 1 hour, this is even higher rate than that of Ondoy. So Ondoy is only 90 millimeters per hour. So that was the one that we experienced during that time. So the intensity and suddenness of this event highlighted the urgent need for smarter, data-driven approaches to flood resilience in our urban communities. So now, what I have here next is, let's try to locate this in the map. So we have on ArcGIS, we have a flood simulation tool that we can use to be able to model flood scenarios. So we need a DEM layer, okay? So that is the elevation layer, and some, okay, sorry. Okay, sorry, I was supposed to click it. So here, there's our map. We're going to locate it. So we need a DEM layer, which is available in the software. And then we can choose a base map, which is 3D, so that we can be able to put in the analysis, the building structures. Now, we can actually set, okay, our simulation, okay, by just going through the analysis, simulation, and rainfall. Okay, so once we are there, we could set the duration, and I set to 100 millimeters. So that mimics what happened to QC area. And as you see, this particular point here is the one that we saw in the picture. So it actually, from the analysis or from our simulation model, so it actually has 1.6 meters of flood. And some areas are even worse. So this is about 2 meters. And then at the parallel road, this is the Panay Avenue. In the model, it turns out even worse at 2.5. So this is just the basics of modeling. Now, I now understand how to, to do the model based on Sir Nathaniel and our architect's description earlier. So as you see now, so this is a simulation for the whole area, at least a bigger area. So now I can correlate that we have some patterns that are emerging. And I would correlate this now to the regular water flow, the normal water flow that that the area has, okay, on its own, on its natural topography. But however, since we're building up just anywhere that we want, so we're actually obstructing this water flow. And we can't hide it because even for simulations, we can see that particular pattern. So now I get to understand so why I get this out of my simulation model. Okay, so this is a sample of how location intelligence combined with AI can be a powerful tool. So GeoAI, we call it GeoAI, so it's an application of artificial intelligence fused with spatial data science and technology to accelerate real-world understanding of business opportunities and even environmental impacts. So organizations are modernizing operations to run at scale through automated data generation and approachable spatial tools and algorithms. Sorry, I'm forgetting to to click this. Okay, but with this under GeoAI, we have machine learning. So it is a field of AI where computer learns from inputs. So with machine learning, we can build accurate models, detect clusters, calculate changes, find patterns, and forecast outcomes with spatial algorithm. Another is deep learning. So deep learning now is a type of machine learning that uses neural networks to learn. So under this, we can extract rich geospatial data and save time by automating extraction, classification, and detection of information from data, such as imagery, video, point clouds, and text. So what can GeoAI do? First, researchers use satellite imagery and LiDAR data to automatically map building footprints, riverbanks, and drainage networks. So machine learning can help classify damaged buildings and flooded areas from high-resolution satellite images and support rapid disaster assessment and recovery. Next, real-time flood surveillance and early warning system uses IoT sensors and machine learning, and we can integrate all those to predict flood levels and issue alerts. We also can find patterns through GeoAI. So we can do analysis on historical flood data and rainfall patterns, revealing clusters of frequent flooding and identifying the most vulnerable barangays. So these insights help city planners prioritize flood mitigation projects and allocate resources where they need it the most. We can also detect anomalies. Real-time monitoring systems can use machine learning to detect sudden spikes in water levels or unexpected flooding in areas that don't usually flood. These anomaly alerts enable faster emergency response and help prevent greater damage. And finally, we can extract insights from unstructured text. So based on social media posts, community reports, and local news, we can extract information about new flood incidents and community responses. So in the following slides, I'm going to share some GeoAI applications done by our remote sensing team using local data from various imagery sources. So late October last year, this is Typhoon Christine, a large and catastrophic tropical cyclone that wreaked havoc and left Naga City underwater. So using SAR, or synthetic aperture radar imagery, and GeoAI, we can actually realize and understand the extent and damage of the flood, which can be ascertained to enable emergency responders determine the affected areas, target support where help is needed, and identify vulnerable areas and mitigate impact in the future. So what you saw here is that this is a comparison of the pre-flood and the post or the during flood capture through SAR imagery. So the red ones here are the change detected. So meaning is this additional water that has been introduced in the area during that flood. And you see the big extent of the area. And as what our beloved architect mentioned earlier, it's not just constrained to one particular locale, but covers a wide area. So this is one of the things that we can actually use, is to use imagery for large-scale area analysis and flood extent monitoring, and as well as try to understand how we could be able to prepare given such information that we have. This next one is a fresh analysis that my team did. This is on Typhoon Emong, which came this July. So we experienced signal number 4 with heavy torrential rainfall triggering landslides and flash floods. So again, this is SAR imagery acquired through Sentinel, which is an open source imagery. So we do have access to that. So we can do change detection by taking the imagery that we got here that is available was July 16th and July 28th. So we get to compare the previous or the storm or pre-typhoon and the during flood situation. And as you see here, these are now the extent of floods that has affected North Luzon, given this particular example. So next one is an example of an application using land classification. So this is especially useful for urban planners, local governments, and developers. And this makes uses of GeoAI to automatically detect the type of land cover. So this is actually in Intramuros. And we use the land cover classification pre-trained model. So we have some pre-trained models already available. So you don't have to do it from scratch. So you just take the model, get your imagery, and then do some analysis. And if in case you can also tweak it and improve it further, but at least you don't have to do it from scratch. So this land cover classification automatically identifies and classifies different features of the imagery. So the spatial resolution of the drone imagery that we used here is around 4 centimeter. So the spatial resolution is like 1 dot or 1 pixel, one pixel, and that measure is 4 centimeters. So imagine how the accuracy of the image is given that perspective. So the blue polygons here are water bodies, red are buildings, dark green are trees, and light green are grasses and shrubs. This next example also uses object detection. So what it does, this is an imagery taken in Taytay Rizal. And this automatically detects now the roofs or the building footprints. Okay, so if we can be able to do this detection on a large scale, we can be able to identify the density, the population density, especially in these areas, the slum areas. So we can be able to have some idea on how much residences are there in a particular, or how many residences are there in the particular area. So this is quite challenging actually for the extraction, because normally the pre-trained models that we got are trained in the US with this manicured lawns, big areas, and carefully architected subdivisions and areas. So as you see in the previous example, we have here small esquinitas and the roofs are quite undiscernible, one building to another. But still, this can be further improved, but there is a way really to actually do it. We also do road extraction, where you noticed earlier, we can extract roads so that it can be able to identify and quickly get that road network information in a particular locale. And this final view here is we try to look into locating the schools in this particular area. And if we're able to get these schools, and we know that schools, public schools, are evacuation areas. So we get now to identify and map the service areas for this particular school. Like this, for example, all this area can be assigned to this particular school, and etc., etc. This can also be able to help us identify if there are enough, given the capacity of the school, and especially if you see the one on top, there isn't any school there or any evacuation area there. We can be able to plan that, oh, these are the unserved areas that we can plan for. This next demonstration is applied to agriculture. So this is tree counting. So from imagery, these are coconut trees. So our team went to Sariaya, Quezon to get this imagery. And from the imagery, we can be able to detect the palm trees or the coconut trees, as you see underneath. So in this particular example, we can be able to easily identify and count the number of trees. And if you're in agriculture and if it's a vast of land, you can be able to translate it to how much harvest or how much production that you will have, that you might be expecting in a particular locality. Okay, so with these dashboards, we can easily identify and count all the trees. We can also have health monitors and identify other areas which may still be planted. This next demonstration is a digital twin of Cebu City. Oops, it doesn't play. Okay, how do I get this to play? It's okay. Anyway, so oh, there it is. Thank you. Yeah, so this is a combination of the flood simulation model that I presented earlier with our 3D model or a digital twin for a particular city. So this particular example or scenario, this particular scenario looks into a 3-meter flood that will wreak havoc in that particular city. And this is how it would look like. So quite scary. All right. So those are examples that I have for you this afternoon. And as I mentioned, these are from our pre-trained models. Okay. When I say pre-trained models, these are already ready-made AI models or machine learning and deep learning models that we can use in order to help us extract information from imagery and make sense out of it and put them on the map. Okay, and these are the things that can actually do available pre-trained models for us. Okay. Okay, so this is my final dashboard. This is a dashboard. This is a real-time dashboard. I was able to update this for today's capture, but unfortunately, I don't know if this is the Monday's capture. But you can still see. Oh no, it's the latest one. So you'll see here the 2 typhoons that we have. The one that has left, that is Nando, and then the other one below. This is the what's the name again? Opong. Ayan. So this incident monitoring dashboard, I'd like to share because it's quite useful. It utilizes live feed from Data Miner Pulse, and we can actually get all the alerts from around the world. So these are alerts that are recent right now. So this is 9/24. The first one is 9/24. Hurricane Ragasa is there. So this is actually a very good dashboard to implement in terms of incident monitoring and looking into all the different events from around the world. So we can categorize them into different lists so that we can able to manage the different types of alerts that we have. Okay, so leading to my final points. So I just like to integrate everything, all these, into what we call a geospatial strategy for framework. First is understand. So we use geospatial intelligence and geo AI to gather and analyze data, like mapping flood-prone areas, monitoring rainfall and river levels, and visualizing real-time impact. Next is we plan. With these insights, we can model different flood scenarios, prioritize interventions, design smarter infrastructure. We can simulate the effects of new drainage systems, green spaces, or gray and green, or early warning networks, and see which strategies will have the greatest impact in protecting our communities. And finally, we act. Sorry, I forgot to click this one. There we go. And finally, we act. So armed with actionable intelligence, we can respond faster and more effectively, issuing timely alerts, guiding emergency teams, and allocating resources where they are needed most. So by leveraging geospatial intelligence and embracing innovation, we can move from reacting to anticipating and preventing, making our communities safer and more livable for all. So I just wanted to go back to my previous, to our scenario earlier using our flood simulation model. So in here, I put SpongeBob's in the intersections. Okay, I really don't know how to put some drainage system or whatever, but what I'm trying to do is, what if the scenario is we have this efficient drainage system along these intersections, and how would it look like? So given that same scenario of 1 hour, 100 millimeter flooding with an efficient drainage system or infiltration system for that matter, this is how it will look like, even if we get to have that particular disastrous event that would come along our way. To end, flood resilience isn't just about weathering the storm. It's about our collective resources and embracing technology, but more importantly, deeply anchored in genuine love of country. This is what's lacking right now. So, and we hope, and even if we have this technology, even we have these resources, because we know we have the solutions. We have the solutions all along. We have the funds all along. All the while we thought we don't have the money for all this, but we do. So I guess what's lacking is the deeply anchored and genuine love for country. And hope that is what we wanted to foster with all the events that's coming up right now. And we can be able to rise above it. So on behalf of Geodata Systems, I would like to thank you, Liveable Cities Philippines, and for everyone for organizing this event and for giving us the platform to share our insights. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. What you stressed was resilient isn't just about bracing for floods. It's about seeing them before they strike. So with geospatial intelligence and AI, you can simulate risks, map who and what is in danger, and even create digital twins of our cities. This is technology that turns data into foresight, giving us enough time or the chance to act early and protect more lives in our communities. For those who have questions joining us on Zoom, please feel free to type it in the chat box, and we will get to it during the panel discussion later. So our next speaker is the Business Development Manager at Inquiro, who is driving organizational growth by creating new business opportunities, and building strong client relationships. His work spans sales strategy and revenue generation, from presentations to deal closure, while fostering cross-functional collaboration to ensure client success and long-term partnerships. Today, he will discuss harnessing digital connectivity for flood-resilient cities, exploring how technology like networks and real-time data analytics can improve warning systems and help local governments keep communities informed and safe. Please join me in welcoming John Gabriel Abarquez.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Sir Bill and the LCC team, thank you for inviting Globe and of course Inquiro. So my description was very sales. So as you may know, I'm in the sales background, but currently I'm working in data analytics. So I used to work in Globe as a sales account manager, but I'm now in data analytics since I fell in love with data and how it can actually help the government and how it can help our country become better. But yeah, so just to provide brief context of who we are. So we currently have the largest and broadest collection of data in the Philippines. So since we are under the Globe Group, we have partnerships with companies within the Globe Group. So essentially we have a lot of data. So while Geodata has geospatial data, in our case, we have consumer data or individual consumer data. So we currently have, to be specific, we have around 94 million customer data. So you can imagine that one customer profile could have an age, demographic, persona, and so on. But aside from that, we also have the ability to actually activate to those people or to those individuals. So since we're talking about flood and everything, flooding in the Philippines is often seen as sort of like an unavoidable consequence. So it's something like you can expect every year, but in fact, it's definitely avoidable. So thank you for all the architects and for the speakers who actually showed us ways on how to avoid floods. It's definitely avoidable. And as Inquiro, as a data analytics company, we want to leverage the consumer data that we have in ensuring that these flood projects come into life. Yep. So moving forward. So as a data analytics company, our goal is really to equip governments with data-powered insights for disaster preparedness and recovery. So in the case of Inquiro, our data could be able to help in terms of planning out projects and also be able to inform the people about these projects and how this can affect their daily lives. So in the case of the data that we're working with, I mentioned that we're working with individual level data. So since Geodata looks into the macro level while we look into the consumer level, so with that, we actually have and we are able to track individual movement. So in this case, we are able to track movements of individuals in a certain barangay or in a certain location. And in this application specifically, we can be able to track consumer movement or constituent movement during storms. So later on, I'll show you a few slides or a few visuals on how we can actually do that. But yeah, so as mentioned earlier, the main thing that we can help on, especially would be on precise and effective risk assessment and planning in terms of flood control projects and localized and personalized awareness campaigns to actually inform the people of these said projects and how it can affect their life or how it can make it better. So moving forward, this is the type of data that we're looking at. So in terms of identifying individuals in a certain location, we have what we call footfall data, which essentially looks into a macro level of a certain location wherein we can map out or draw a specific polygon and determine the foot traffic and the counts in specific areas. So in this case, we are in Makati. So here, this is actual data from our system on our actual first-party data. Here we can see a few hexagons here and a few redness in certain areas. So basically, this represents the foot traffic. So actually, I was talking to Sir Jojo earlier. So since they have this geospatial data and we have individual consumer data, I just can imagine how much use cases we can derive from that kind of partnership, right? And how it can actually help out LGUs and potential flood projects. But aside from that, we can also do signal mapping using GPS. So the main thing that we're looking at here, since we are under the telco, we enjoy or we are able to utilize telco level data, but we are also partnered with data providers that can provide us GPS data. So essentially, what our data looks like is GPS data, telco level data, and consumer data. So later on, I'll also show you other use cases and how we can actually leverage this type of data set. And also here we have origin destination data, which can also be very relevant in terms of planning out roads, planning out traffic schemes, and so on. There. So this is a sample use case from typhoon last year, Typhoon Karina on Marikina River. So currently, this is just leveraging counts. So as you can see here, we are looking at high footfall or certain concentrations on the map. And based on the color, you can see that this is the highest concentration. So how can we apply this? So imagine that we can do this in a per barangay level. So on a more granular lens, basically. So what if we do that in barangay 1, 2, 3, for example, and we determine that the highest foot traffic is in this area, and looking at it, apparently during floods or during typhoons, let's say we don't have an evacuation center there, but that's the part where most people dwell in. So with that kind of insights and with this kind of mapping, we can determine where we can put up our evacuation centers and of course, essentially where we can plan out our projects moving forward. So in the case of flooding, for example, if we are able to determine that this is the main concentration of people, why? So next question is why? So during storms, why do they dwell here? Is it because there's an evacuation center or is it because the other areas are flooded? So that's why I was very excited when I was talking to Geodata, because if we are able to layer their data with ours, then it's going to be a really good insights, more. Yep. So moving forward, this is another sample case study for Typhoon Kabayan in Mindanao. So this is the currently, to be honest with you, this is the data that we currently do not have, but we can definitely leverage. So this type of data is available publicly, and since we are able to actually activate or reach out to our customers or to our customer base or first-party data, this type of data is very important to us to be able to plan out campaigns or maybe at least reach out to constituents of an area and inform them that, okay, there's going to be a typhoon here, go to this evacuation center and so on. So later on, I'll also show some other examples of how this type of data can be actionable. Hold on. There. So actually, I mentioned that we look into counts specifically. So this is a kind of a new study that we did. Basically, we mapped out specific bridges in Manila, and we were able to determine foot traffic in each of these bridges. So actually, we isolated 2 bridges since we saw that there were really interesting data that we saw there. So this is during a typhoon, but we also compared this data to regular days. So moving forward, first bridge would be MacArthur Bridge in Metro Manila. So as you can see here, the peak is also between 8 to 9 a.m. But for some reason, there's no peak in the afternoon. So that was a big question on our side, because how do they go home, right? So they use the bridge going to somewhere, but why don't they go back? So that's one of the questions. So in the case of flood or maybe urban planning, then maybe we can ask why. Is it because it's flooded in the exit? Or is it because the road is congested, then other people look for alternatives? And for the next bridge, we actually showed that we can see here that the population or the counts were pretty much also high in the afternoon here in Ayala Bridge. So in this, we can somewhat conclude that maybe the people who used MacArthur Bridge to go to a certain destination went back home using the Ayala Bridge. So this is not something I can confirm right away, but this just shows how we can leverage actual individual counts into urban planning or maybe traffic scheme adjustments, flood relation projects, but yeah. there. So in terms of how it can become actionable, so I mentioned earlier that we have a lot of data, but it's mostly consumer-centric, and being able to partner up with, for example, a body or an LGU or a company that can provide us with actual flood data and so on, we can leverage that partnership into creating targeted campaigns or targeted informational materials to constituents or to residences of this particular LGU or like a more bigger scale, right? So here's just some of the examples that we can do. So pre-disaster, we can send out messages to equip people about this specific let's say storm coming. Other than that, during disaster, we can also send out SMS that okay, flood right now would be around 1 meter to 2 meters. So the nearest evacuation center in your LGU would be here, and then you can list it down so everyone can see. So with that kind of communication, then we can be able to ensure that the population or that the residents are informed on where to go. Other than that, post-disaster, of course, we can provide guidance and information to ensure those impacted can find assistance and resources. So similarly to the during disaster message, we can also do post-disaster messages wherein we can inform the residents or the population of what to do next. So essentially, we are a data analytics company who actually really is looking for partners to be able to help out our LGUs or our country. Because currently we have the infrastructure, we have the system, we have the expertise. However, we do honestly lack the data to actually get going and to actually be involved in solving these types of issues. But yeah, as I can speak for Inquiro as a whole, we want to be part of the solution. So to end my slides, so Inquiro is building solutions that create meaningful impact, providing you access to the right insights. So I mentioned earlier that while our data is limited, it can definitely be usable, especially in planning out projects, reaching out to constituents, and so on. So with our consumer analytics solutions technology, we can definitely step into more actionable things to do for our LGUs. But yeah, essentially, we want to be part of the solution. And we are inviting LGUs, companies, and other private entities, public entities, to help out, or let's partner up in creating a better Philippines. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Your case studies prove that data can guide smarter evacuation, relief, and recovery decisions far beyond what traditional census are available out there. So this is how technology can help local governments act faster, save lives, and build resilience. Again, if you have any questions for our online guests, please type your questions in the chat box and we'll get to it in our panel discussion. So let's welcome our distinguished speakers in front for our panel discussion. Mr. Bill Luz, Chairman of Liveable Cities Philippines, Nathaniel von Einsiedel, Chairman and Principal Urban Planner of CONCEP INC, Paulo Alcazaren, Architect and Urban Planner, Jonathan Abalos, Director of the Geospatial Data Products and Services Department of Geodata Systems Technologies, John Gabriel Abarquez, Business Development Manager of Inquiro. This is your chance to engage directly with our panel of experts. And please, we will take questions here in person and our on-site guests. State your name and affiliation. Please state your question immediately so we can get through all the questions during our panel discussion. For those who are on Zoom, please type in your questions at the chat box. Handing it over now to our chairman, Bill Luz, for the panel discussion.
Thank you. Thank you, Yenny. Yeah, now we've come to my favorite part of the afternoon, which is the panel discussion. And as usual, we we can take questions directly from the floor here and questions over the Zoom Q&A box or chat box. So if anybody would like to ask the first question, please feel free to start right now. Introduce yourself, who you are addressing the question to, and fire away with your question. Anybody with the first question? Yes, please. I see. Okay, go ahead.
Good afternoon. For those who are panelists here. So my name is Zan Paglo from Palafox. So this question is addressed to Architect Dinking. So with all these corruptions in our government, so how do you see the future urban planning the next 5 to 10 years?
I think this is an eye-opener. What's happening is an eye-opener. And it raises the fact that there is no long-term planning that's being done. There's no comprehensive planning. And so I think what's happening is going to catalyze a better kind of approach to flood management through a more water-sensitive kind of urban planning. There are, of course, a number of constraints. Like, for example, many of our LGUs don't have the technical capability to undertake the preparation of stormwater management systems. And they also cannot afford to engage expensive urban planners like your boss. So we need to capacitate the LGUs. And I think we also need to kind of maybe partner some of the poorer LGUs with the more affluent LGUs. And I think this is very possible because we are moving into a kind of a metropolitan kind of a situation. Whereas before there were only a few metropolitan areas, now there are a lot more. And so the core city could serve as the mentor for the surrounding LGUs. And most of the time, the core city is a highly urbanized city, and therefore will have the resources to engage the more expensive urban planners and share that with the surrounding LGUs. So I feel confident that I think things are going to improve, conditions are going to be much better in the coming years. It may not happen in the next 5 years, however. It may take longer than that, but I think we're moving into that kind of a direction.
In defense of so-called expensive consultants, especially in physical planning and design, all of the planning professions, environmental planners, architects, landscape architects, and interior designers in the Philippines are the least paid of all consultants in the Philippines. Lawyers get more money than us per building hour. No? We're the least paid. So I think it's a matter of the value that we add to the process and the trust and respect that our clients give us to give them the proper advice. It's just that in the last half century, well, as you can see, the 1941 plan wasn't followed either. So how can we be consultants or give advice if our advice is not taken seriously? And the value we add is that if we had followed all of the advice of the planners 80 years ago, we would be in less deep, literally, waters than we are now. So maybe on the side of the environmental planners, architects, and related disciplines, we should stick together and push the agenda of being properly paid professionally. And if you look at the scheme of things, the fees paid to us as consultants with our expertise is minuscule in compared to the benefits and the lives saved and property damage saved from all of this that's happening to us. Of course, the corruption is a different issue that we as physical planners cannot address, unless of course we run for Congress ourselves.
Thank you. You know, that's an interesting point, but I think mainly that's a governance point. But I think adding on to what Paulo was saying, I think what's important here is that, you know, it's one thing to value the insights and the design ideas that architects, urban planners give to a project, you know, basically consultants. But I think there's an equally important side that is not often referred to, which is how smart are the clients? Because you know, the client has to be able to recognize the value of the design idea and approve it, fund it, you know, to make it a reality. And you know, I think there's nothing worse than a rich client with no brains, okay, and no taste, because you don't know what you're going to come up with. You can have the best professionals in the world, and I think, you know, the Philippines has many, many good professionals, but is the government, is the client smart enough to follow the advice? And I think this is where we've gone wrong in this whole thing with the corruption. It's been kind of completely bent out of shape. Not only not following the advice, but going against the advice and corrupting the whole system and stealing our money. I think that's a whole other problem in itself. But I think even if we take a look at the private sector, you got to have smart clients. And that's why I think when you take a look at these projects, the ones which Paulo flashed on the screen, I mean, these are clients who are obviously listening to the consultants that they have hired to solve problems. And that's why they are resorting to these measures and nature-based solutions rather than following the DPWH traditional flood control models. No? Okay, any other questions? Yeah, I see. Okay, two questions here. Let's take one here, then one back there. Go ahead.
Hi, hello. Good afternoon. My name is Nelvin Solomon from CEO Consultancy. So I just have the observations and comments also with things happening around. So anyone or everyone in the panel may feel free to react on this. So actually, I have observed that DPWH is mandated to work on areas that they can work in. They only work on rivers and its easements, so they don't care about the upstream lands anymore. So that's just my observation. And another thing is the willingness of the public to ask for return for inconvenience or public inconvenience. So some other countries are somehow more open to have more taxes. If there is disturbances around the city, so the contractor or the developer will pay more for the government because of the disturbances that they're doing for all its construction activities around. So those are just my 2 points. And one more thing is the Department of Water. So I think that is somehow an institutional move that may somehow solve the fragmented or isolated efforts of every government agency to work together. So anyway, so please feel free to comment about it.
Thank you. Would you like to react to that, Dinky or Paulo?
Well, in 2012 and again in 2018, the Asian Development Bank undertook a study and made a recommendation to create river basin development councils for the 18 major rivers in the Philippines. Okay. And this development councils for river basins is multi-sectoral. It includes private sector, it includes the LGUs, it includes DNR, DPWH, and I think DA. So they're looking at, well, they're supposed to look at the river basin from a multi-sectoral perspective. Okay, DNR has its mandate, DPWH has its mandate, DA has its mandate. Okay, the LGUs have a territorial responsibility, and so, you know, when you think about flood management, it involves different levels. So it cannot be left to DPWH alone. Okay, and so the River Basin Development Council serves as an institutional framework for the kind of coordination that's necessary. Okay. Now, but it was not actually mobilized up to now. And that's why we have this problem of fragmentation, because nobody is orchestrating it. And a lot of things are left to DPWH. Okay, but a lot of the DPWH projects do not connect to the LGU systems or the provincial system or the cities and municipalities. So, you know, it will not work if they're not connected. And so, you know, there is a DOST program that's happening in Pampanga. They're looking at the basin, but DPWH doesn't attend the meetings. And all the LGUs are meeting and talking to each other and identifying solutions. But without DPWH there, the individual LGUs plans are also not going to work, because they all connect to a river basin. And that's, I think, maybe the focus of what needs to be done in the next coming months.
If I may, really, the big picture is we have to redraw the way we have to redraw governance based on physical constructs and not political constructs. The river basin, the 18 river basins, ridge to reef, we are all affected within the basin. So our political boundaries of towns, cities, provinces, and even regions are not based on physical reality. Geospatially, we have to redraw them for maximum efficiency. It will take a great leap, a great change, because, and we've tried to talk to politicians, even Metro Manila alone with 17 kingdoms and 17 queens and kings, they don't cooperate. It's ridiculous not to govern it as a whole province. But even regionally, the NCR is not based on the river basin that affects, that brings the floods down from the Sierra Madres. So we have to go and do our political framework or boundaries based on geospatial science and earth sciences, rather than the science of collecting taxes and just spending it willy-nilly. It will take a great leap. That's the next big change we have to take. Otherwise, it's all useless.
Thank you. I saw another question back here. Yes, please. And then we'll move to this side of the room. Okay, go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Mac Evangelista from Container Living Philippines. So I've been working on sustainability-based projects and I'm exploring permaculture principles. Architect Alcazaren, from your perspective as a landscape architect, how do you see permaculture fitting into or being integrated with the professional landscape architecture practice?
Okay. Landscape architects are what we deal with. Plants and planting and agriculture is only one of the aspects of what we look at. What we generally deal with is space, just like the environmental planners, although at a different scale and scope. anything that deals with productivity in terms of agriculture, primary or secondary or tertiary, will all help. But it's all based on what we need all of this greenery, plants, and food for, which is settlements. So settlement patterns then go back to what we do as spatial planners and as environmental planners. The architects design the buildings. They're at the other scale of it. So the big picture is really handled by environmental planners and landscape architects doing great large-scale spatial planning based on the science of where we the areas and the natural processes that affect productivity. You cannot have productivity whether any type of agri primary or secondary. It's all dependent on the ingredients that you need to grow the stuff that we need to harvest, to eat, and to sustain all of it. It's all connected, and what we've done in the last 100 years is to divide up the whole process. So we're not looking at the big picture anymore. What we need are big picture people and processes that acknowledge that everything is connected. And let's not underestimate the intelligence of the Philippines to understand all of this. We are much less capacitated because we have been defunded in terms of education. I was talking to Dinky a while ago. All of this, the geospatial data that our good friend here is presenting. Our big problem is that 95% Filipinos are map illiterate. They don't know how to read maps. You have to retrain them. I have a textbook from 1934 that showed that we used to teach grade 4 and grade 5 children how to read topography and contours. That was almost 100 years ago. We don't teach that anymore. I asked my son, I show him a map and I ask him, where are we here? Oh, well, I'll just look at Waze. I would ask Waze to tell me. They have no perception of geospatial reality. We have to bring that back. But going back to permaculture, this all is good, but it has to be in the context of larger scale planning.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, please. Hello, and can you just comment on the previous question earlier? So it was mentioned that maybe I can associate it with the hearings, right? That those who are tagged as flood prone areas are the ones that should have the infrastructure, the projects, the flood control projects. So they are questioning why put a flood control infrastructure in a non-flood prone area. So in this particular instance, we might need to revisit our worldview, because what we might see as an area which cannot be stricken by flood may turn out to be experiencing flood in the next few years, or it's just an event waiting to happen. So what we need is to remap maybe, or realign our perspective. We align what we originally know, realign with the data that we have right now, because we have access now to more data. We know more. We have more information. We have these. We need to realign our worldview to what the current view is right now, because that worldview that my area is high, I will not be flooded, is old news. Because anything can happen. It's one of the myths that we should say that, oh, my area is high, we won't get flooded. So it's a myth. So we need to realign all those worldview that we have way back in the 70s and 80s. That, oh, we're good. This is a good area. But we have to realign it based on what the data is telling us right now. I guess that's what's important. So not being tagged as a flood risk area might not be a smart move anymore. We just need to rethink and reevaluate and use all the data that we have right now to understand the future impact of flood.
Thank you for that clarification. There's a question back here on the back row there somewhere. Yeah, please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Daniel from WTA Labs. So I have a question for Sir Jonathan and Sir John. So how do you promote and communicate the importance and urgency of using these geospatial technology and data-based technologies given two things? So when the presentation was going on earlier, I was thinking of the challenges on how do you scale these services. So given these two things, first, LGUs or perhaps even private developers are often only required some planning documents like the CLUP. So hence they're only keen or knowledgeable of the basic GIS and tools that are only directly related to these mandated documents or practices. And as well as the challenges related to the pace of capacitating our local planners versus the pace of the development of these geospatial technologies. So I remember I wasn't here not even less than 5 years ago, 3 years ago. So there is that pace, a gap in the paces of our capacities and the advancement of our geospatial technologies. So to sum that up, how do you strategize given those struggles and gaps?
Yeah, so maybe I'll start. So what we do is first, we strengthen our partnerships in education. Kasi sila yung we build the competencies, the interest, and as well as the passion in really delivering long-term solutions through this geospatial information, geospatial science. So we are strengthening our partnership with education and the academe. That's one. And then the next thing also is similar to this one, we strengthen our partnerships with different organizations because this is quite important in order for us to synergize the tools and the technology that we have with the needs also of other organizations. Those are little steps. So I guess what we really wanted is more onto network, to educate, and as well as to let people understand that these technologies are real, it's in our grasps, and it's just a matter of really reaching out, and we can be able to use this.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So on our side, as part of the data analytics group, no, I agree that it's not really a new concept per se, but it's a new thing that we're trying to push here in the Philippines specifically, and not a lot of LGUs are very accepting. More of like they're not willing to invest. Let's make it more transparent. But basically, similar to Geodata, we've been doing a lot of things in the field. So we've been meeting with LGUs for a lot of things. But the main reason why we've been meeting with them is because we want to make data more digestible, or we want it to make more sense for LGUs specifically. So one of the things what we actually do is we go there, we tell them that we have this. How do you think we can partner with you? Or what do you think about this? How do you think you can leverage this type of data in your daily operations, or at least to make a better community, right? So, but yes, I agree. It's a very new concept, and one of our pain points currently is actually pushing data analytics to LGUs, because I don't want to say they're closed-minded, but it's really a new concept per se that it would take time to adapt. But given that we're doing these efforts, one of the hopes that we have as a data analytics company is we hope that we're going to that smart city or smart way of handling people or handling the country. It's to really leverage the data that we currently have right now and how to make it more digestible to the people, and of course how to make it or how to utilize it to be better or create better projects for the people. Thanks.
Dingy, you want to add to that?
Yeah, well, I'd like to suggest something to our data analytics guys here. A lot of LGUs get intimidated by the high-tech speak, and they oversimplify by saying, I want my city, I want my LGU to be a smart city. Okay? And but very often it becomes a matter of a tech organization proposing what that technology, what that smart city technology should be, okay? Now, if it jives with the LGU's priorities, fine. But I'd like to propose maybe a simple kind of an approach, okay? First of all, it's easy to get data on topographic characteristics of an LGU, okay? From a topo survey, from NAMRIA, from Project NOAA, you get topo maps, okay? Okay, we have a regulation that says you should not build on 18% slope, okay? So if you map the 18% slopes, you immediately know what are the landslide prone, erosion prone areas, one, okay? Second, we have disaster risk maps. So we have flood maps. We have storm area maps. We have earthquake maps, okay? So these are easy to plot. So that's your second layer, the disaster prone areas. Third, biodiversity areas, which is also listed by the ENR, okay? So if you plot these three, then you know what areas should not be developed. So those are your areas that are unsuitable for development. Therefore, in reverse, you know what the areas are that are suitable for urban expansion. Then if you now adopt, if the LGUs now adopt the ordinance and the regulations based on that information, then I think they will be open to using the kind of technology that's available. It kind of simplifies things to something that they immediately can utilize, and they're already familiar with those three things. When they do their CIDRA for their CLUP updating, they already know that information. So it's a matter of, I think, putting it together and using the technology and then translating it into the policy and set of regulations that are appropriate.
Thank you, Dinky. Very, very practical recommendations. No, while we're on the topic of data analytics, I was going to ask for both Inquiro and Geodata. For Inquiro, is it practical? Let's say going back to floods, no, and at least flood prediction. Is it more practical to deploy a bunch of sensors to be able to track where floods are, or can you derive that information from other sources, or can you derive the information from your own consumers based on their location? For instance, can you come to a conclusion regarding where floods are? And for Geodata, has government ever approached you or to team up, let's say Pagasa or DOST or whoever, to put together some of this real-time data into flood modeling maps or flood, early warning systems? I mean, has that, in other words, can the government team up with the private sector for both of you and outsource some of this service if they can, because maybe they don't have enough people on their side?
So yeah. Len here is more familiar with it.
For real-time data, they do not. So there's no, both Revox and Pagasa are customers, and they use a lot of ArcGIS technology, but they don't use it for, I'm not quite sure they are using it for any real-time data mapping. So in that end, yeah.
You executed the ENR right before Sec Euro was changed. I attended a conference where they showed that they had real-time data for land. I forget which system they were using, but all of the regions were now able to access the database that is consistently updated so they can monitor mining and quarrying. So I don't know what system they were using, but it's available. The government had already paid for it. I don't know if they're using your system or maybe not.
They're currently using our system, but also on the other end, we are working with a lot of LGU PDRMO teams. They're the ones that use real-time feeds from Pag-asa, let's say, as in the tracking of the typhoon. So they know which towns to evacuate first and et cetera, et cetera.
Once you get down to the, again, we're going down to, once you get down to the real world, depends on how granular you get.
Yeah.
And things happen
pretty fast.
What is the situation last month? It's not the same situation this month. It's certain at the barangay, this at the street level. So it really, it can only be as useful as the people trained to monitor.
That's true.
So all this data, you can get just overwhelmed by all the data. You need to be able to translate it into something
usable and they can decide on.
Yeah.
So
And
that's
also-
what we're trying to do with the LGUs. These people are heavily trained to make use of the software on their own without much assistance from us.
Yan nga po yung problema, yung pagkukulang sa capacity nila.
Yes.
And then if we talk to a lot of CPDO and NPDO officers, a lot of the environmental planners that man these plantillas, a lot of them are young and without experience. And most of them just got their licenses based on what they studied, was mostly just the laws. So you have a whole, there are what, 8,000 now, environmental planners, about 8,000, but maybe 90% of them are very young with no experience. So we have a lot of steep climb in terms of capacity building. That's where our funds, government funds should go to training our plantillas to be able to, so much data. It's just so much data, you can easily be overwhelmed. And what they do is the mayor will just buy the service, set up the systems, put the hardware and software there. And we just see the computers, we see the you pay a lot for each station. Hindi nagagamit dahil walang trained. So then they have to call us expensive planners to come in and assist them. Yeah, we of course we welcome the job, but we can't do all 1,600 towns and cities, and all of them need help.
Yeah.
So that's the challenge in terms of training and capacity building that we have. Wonderful applications, wonderful products, but if we can't make it, but going back to that, doesn't get out of the basic situation, but even without these tools, a lot of the things that we're talking about
Practical things and
is
solutions,
common
yeah.
sense.
Yes.
You know the rivers are going to overflow. You know that the revetment will collapse. You can see it. That ordinary people can see that it won't work. We have to go back to very basic things and just make people realize and bring them into the monitoring process. I think that's where the data analytics, if you're outsourcing, which is what the president did with his sumbong sa presidente.
Right, yeah.
Sumbong sa Pangulo, that's outsourcing. But this can be done in a smaller scale at the LGU level, because almost everyone has a cell phone. They can report these things. They can add to the data that we need to analyze to make this policy decisions. Of course, there's one is policy, which is forward thinking, and one is immediate needs as the event is happening. These are two different scenarios that we have to look at.
Now it goes back to what Bill was saying a while ago. You have great products, but some of your customers are not smart enough to digest. And then we have great customers too. They have a lot of smart ideas.
They're smart. All Filipinos are smart. Some are smarter than others.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. The solutions are there. Yeah.
And yeah, I'd just like to add that another struggle as well is on data sharing and data collaboration, because different agencies, even sometimes government agency, will be requesting this data to another, and it's very difficult to get, impossible to get. So one of the things as well that we were talking about earlier with Gab is part of being a smart city, as he mentioned, was having all this data available for people, access to this data, because this is what really enriches everyone.
Yeah, on that side, I think what can ease the acceptance of the technology is designing a friendly enough user interface. The dashboards,
Right.
but sometimes even the dashboards are far too complicated. You can simplify the dashboards so that people can understand how to use them and then understand how to use their own data. I think the UIs, the dashboards are very important. We have to work on the dashboard. I've seen dashboards from other cities in other countries, far too complicated. They have control centers with 1,000 screens, and then you can't make sense of it because they just make it too complicated. I think the thing is to simplify, just use as much technology as you can understand, and then work your way up to the more complicated data.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, maybe in our case, while we can definitely infer certain data based on what we have, sensor data or actual real-time data can be very helpful, but it also depends on the use case or what are we trying to solve, right? So if we want to like determine just population counts in certain periods of time in a certain location, then our data could be enough. But I agree that LGUs would want something more transparent and augmenting it with something like sensor data, IoT.
Sensor data.
Yeah.
Flood, which comes from rain gauges. Now, if you go, years ago, I saw that the DOST was going to spend like $2,000 per rain gauge. Then I found rain gauge at National Bookstore. That's the original NBS, by the way. For 100 pesos, right? Because the rain gauge is just a simple cylinder. You just have to know how to calibrate it, no? But the information is the same. Of course, the high-tech one would send the data wirelessly, et cetera, et cetera. But you can leapfrog over that with your cell phones, right? So instead of spending $2,000 on a sensor, you can spend 100, 200 pesos. It was on sale, no? But you can make one. And again, going back to that textbook that I was pointing to in 34, it showed how an elementary school kid could make their own rain gauge. See how simple it is? So let's not overburden with just too much technology when we can. Good technology, complicated can come in later. We start with the basics.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that. And I actually agree. While I agree that we shouldn't overcomplicate things, especially in topics or in issues like this specifically. So we want to have it very transparent, very straightforward. So yeah, in our case, we just really want to make projects make more sense with the help of data, to the point that LGUs would just do it. So it wouldn't really make sense for them not to do it, because you have the plan, you have the data, so why don't we do it? So it's really more of like that.
Gab, you collect a lot of data, you track a lot of movement. I have two questions. One is sort of a practical one. The other one is I'm just curious. The practical one is based on people movement and floods, are you able to broadcast messages to certain areas or certain people to tell them to avoid areas of the city or streets? That's one. And second, you showed quickly sort of origin destination flow. So within Metro Manila, for instance, what is the most popular highly traveled origin to destination route?
So for the first question, yes, we can definitely do that. So currently we're working on something more real time. So beforehand, it was at least days before the actual broadcast. So right now we're trying to do broadcast at least within 30 minutes. So definitely it could be whatever, actually could be like a announcement about the roads closed or there's a flood in this street specifically. As for the next question, yeah, I sorry, I just need to. So what's
The origin destination. Yeah, what's the most popular origin
which is the most-
destination
all right.
route in Metro Manila?
It actually really depends on the day. So actually, we've done a study specifically for within the whole Metro Manila, and we've noticed that the MOA area or the Entertainment City area gets a lot of visits on weekends. But of course, on weekdays, it's really more on the CBDs. But yeah, that's actually one of the studies that we currently do. We partner up with malls, retail, and to actually determine like where do people go, where do people go after they visit your locations. So in the case of floods, then we can definitely show like LGUs where do your constituents go every day, and so it's really something that you can. It's a curious thing also that you can look at.
It's logical. Kasi MOA, typically cross area for the shop there. That's more than all of the other.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree.
So you gravity modeling the old, then you know that the attachment is the whole of the NCR. So look at
Yes.
NCR is your Monday, Friday.
Monday to Friday, yeah.
So you know, interesting thing would be to find out which bedroom communities are the ones that are and that kind of feedback is what we try to seek to understand. Not at a metropolitan level. We can't do it for each of the individual LGUs, which is useless to do. So we really have to govern Metro Manila as a problem.
Yeah. Sorry, maybe to add to that also. While I agree also that a movement of like NCR as a whole, we can't really derive a lot of conclusions from it because it didn't really change for the past few years, maybe. So.
Actually, the center of where people live.
Oh yeah.
They were all northward and southward. Just using this analysis.
Yes, definitely.
Jojo, a question for you. You're able to do the flood modeling, you're able to pick up all this data, even all the way to satellite imaging. Have you ever been asked by the government or by this independent construction panel to map out the flood-prone areas versus projects versus ghost projects? Because it sounds paradoxical to map a ghost project, but if we knew where they were supposed to be and we correlated that with flooding, I think we would get a very graphic picture of what's very wrong in the country.
Yeah. So actually, we just recently we had interest from government on using satellite imagery to tracking this government projects. So incidentally, I asked Mar, so try to look at Bulacan and what's the difference between last year and this year, given the public data. There's a public data on the actual coordinates of the projects. And unfortunately, we can't see anything. So either these are ghost projects or
see the coordinates.
Exactly, or the coordinates are wrong. But I guess to the point, definitely, yes, we can use satellite imagery specifically for this purpose. There's been an interest in this, as I mentioned, by the government, but no real, no solid or final direction yet. But yes, this is something that we can use as a solution for this.
But if I may, we don't have to even go to sat imagery. We can do drones.
Yes.
Even commercial drones have distances that they can fly. It's now up to 25 kilometers. And it's easy to do a waypoint. That means if you are LGU and you have a river, you can automatically send the bird up every day to go 10 kilometers, 20 kilometers and back and map in real time with metadata with GPS. So you can check on all of the work of DPWH we can access it. It's very easy to do. Everywhere we go for our work, we bring drones. And we see a lot of this flood control projects really messing up the rivers. It's very easy to take pictures of them and get the metadata and download it. You have it instantly. It can even be streamed, even consumer drones. Of course, if you tell the government to buy these drones, the 100,000 peso drone becomes 1.5 million.
We might be buying a lot of overpriced drones. Okay, let me go to the last question and get back to, we have a few more questions here. Okay, we'll go a little bit over time. I'll make it quick. I'll take the last two questions here in the front and then one in the back. Okay, please go ahead.
Hello, I'm CJ from Inquiro. I actually made the map earlier on the OD matrix, so I want to answer quickly your question on like what's the most popular destination in Metro Manila. It's actually Quezon City and Manila. And then the least popular is interesting. It's Pateros and Navotas. So like people travel to them like they're not popular destinations. Yes, from Inquiro. Anyway, so my question is my question is for Paulo. I want to like do a more of community question rather than like the big scale like projects, because I'm interested in the design of the like the blue containers done in Naga, like the drainage. They take the one to make like for the roof of the house, and then they connect to like drainage. I want to ask like, is it open source? Like, can we like get the design? Like, can we replicate it? And then how much does it cost? Because I live in Kamanava and like my neighborhood is always flooded. And maybe like we can make some money because my dad is a junk shop. Like we have a junk shop. Maybe we can like make the like containers and like sell to my neighbors.
Yeah, I think the setup you saw was just 2,000 or 3,000 pesos. And you can build one of these for a regular size house for about that much. But then, of course, if it's an institutional building, it will cost a bit more. But you can, if the city goes and buys the drums in bulk, it can bring down the cost. So it's a matter of economies of scale. Pero mura lang yan, you can bring it down to just thousands of pesos per residence. And then you can also fund this through the LGU.
Are designs available? I mean,
yes, I think Naga's already going. That was a pilot a couple of months ago, and they're going to
Publish.
disseminate the information very quickly.
Okay, thanks. I had a last question back here. Back row. Yeah, thanks.
I have a question and a comment, please. No, my question lang, since the others were asked, is I think it was you, Sir Paulo, who talked. You said that reforestation has never really been done successfully in the country, but you said that that's where everything begins, hindi ba? That's why we have flooding, because the watersheds are all gone. So obviously that's my question lang is, what has happened to it, and why does it seem to be? It seems to be a no-brainer that if you, and it probably does not cost as much billions and trillions to do our mountains, no? But okay, that's the question. What went wrong and what can be done? And my comment is, well, Sir Bill said it earlier. Is the client smart enough? Is the government client smart enough to receive the proper advice? Maybe the counter to that is, he's too smart. If he has an ulterior motive, then he can come out with counter moves, no? We're involved in flood control in our barangay, and I think what came out in all of these things is they found that flood control through dredging is one of the easiest way to hide things, no? So they're that smart. They're smart enough to know that Sir Paulo's beautiful suggestions Einsiedel of sponges and all of these things that work well in the new cities. These are cheaper, but they're smart enough to know that you're not going to be able to squeeze out the money from there. No? So I went through everything, but I just want a final comment. It all boils down to governance. Okay, 2028 is crucial. If we want the national leadership to go out there and empower and pressure, and all this River Basin Development Council seems to be the basic thing at the top that's supposed to integrate all of the resources of DENR and DPWH and you know, get all the best things. I mean, again, it's a governance thing. If you put the right people, then the right use of the resources. You know, you pinpointed very competently the governance management issues from the national to the local capacity planning. You know. I mean, the national government is supposed to support the weaknesses of the local government. If capacity planning is the weakness, so that they can more easily understand the great what do you call them, dashboards, you know, for that to be understood, it's all governance. So that's my comment. So question ko lang is, why has reforestation failed? And then an appeal to all of us, guys, 2028, we gotta put the right people there. That's it.
The Philippines has a National Integrated Protected Area System, NIPAS. NIPAP law is supposed to protect.
Right.
Very good on paper. It's all been mapped out. We know the areas that need to be protected, reforested, etc. But there's not enough manpower. So if you talk to DNR, the biggest problems is policing the protected areas, and our rangers. There are not enough rangers. They're useless against people with agendas for illegal logging, illegal mining, who are armed and can just kill you, and our rangers have been killed. So it's a matter of prioritizing how to implement the NIPAS, protect the areas. A lot of also the reforestation initiatives have been just greenwashing. So you have Arbor Day, you have the photo op with the mayors, governors, whatever, but it's not sustained. And in terms of overall landscape master planning in terms of reforestation, there are a lot of issues to do that DNR has to address, which is the type of vegetation you're reintroducing, how to sustain them. And that goes back again to the river basins and how all of this would contribute to the integrity of each of the river basin systems, because the forests are an integral part of those river basins. We're also talking about the problems of why we need to dredge is because of the silt. And the silt is also part of the problem of the loss of soil. The loss of soil, because it erodes, then we have no topsoil. That again goes back to the issue of productivity. Agricultural productivity is affected by erosion. So it's all tied up. So what we really need is to reprioritize where our money goes.
If I may add, because of the lack of manpower of the DENR for the protection of protected areas, DENR goes into an arrangement of co-management with the LGUs. Now the problem that is all right if the partner LGU is a highly urbanized city, because they can afford and they have the people for their enroll. The problem is for the 4th and 6th class municipalities that cannot afford to even hire the proper enroll. And very often it's only one person. So the enroll is also the municipal engineer and the DRRM person. 3 positions, 1 person, and all the staff are casual and they're replaced every 6 months. So it really needs the capacity building at the local government level and the political will, because many of our protected areas are also occupied by settlements, and they are growing. And so the number of people in the protected areas is expanding, and there is no system of controlling it. And that's affecting our water supply, and that's also causing the flooding in the midstream and downstream. So it really is a ridge to reef kind of a problem, and that's where the different levels of government really needs to orchestrate its activities. And as I mentioned earlier, the River Basin Development Council, I think, is the best institutional framework that can address that particular issue.
Everyone's going up here because there's no more land down here because Sagittarius was also flooding.
Let me close with a question going back to nature-based solutions. I'll address it to Dinky and to Paulo. In practical terms, how much time is needed to put in a nature-based solution? Is it a matter of months or is it a matter of years? And considering the frequency of storms and of floods these days, it seems like the need is now. But realistically, can that be met by a nature-based solution? Are there short-term solutions available?
Yeah, there are short-term interventions and long-term interventions. Long-term is the reforestation of all of the uplands that we denuded. The short-term is the stuff that we showed a while ago: the rain gardens, the detention ponds. First moratorium on all of the revetment walls because they don't work. Stop building them because they're not part of a grand master plan. They really don't work. And if we put a moratorium, our next problem is what to do with those little stretches they've already built, because it will take energy to also demolish them, because otherwise they will just add to the problem. So it's a big challenge, but there are things that we can do that is 3 years, 6 years, 9 years, the usual political terms. So in the first few years, but what we can do is start planting trees. Everyone can start planting. Anywhere and everywhere, we can make use of trees that you can. One of the things we always suggest to mayors is start a nursery, a city or town nursery, start planting trees, native trees. But they can't wait the 3 years for a sapling to grow to a good size. They want instant everything. But you have to start somewhere. So you start with planting native trees in city and town nurseries, because we could use the trees for reforestation, for street planting. The rain gardens are pretty easy because a lot of these are shrubs that you can grow in 1 or 2 months. But our sticking point is getting DPWH to accept the designs that we show, the rain gardens, because it's not in their playbook. So we have to get, and especially the revetments, instead of the concrete, we have bioengineering solutions like the coco logs and coco quires. It is not in their approved standard. Of course, their standards are not very good anyway, but it's not in the standards. They will always say hindi po yan sa standard namin, so hindi namin ma-implement yan. So that's a big problem.
Thank you. So I think what we see here is that there are no quick fixes, okay, no quick solutions. And in a way, we have to continue to suffer through this problem. But on the other hand, we need to start somewhere. And we need to start maybe small, but we need to scale it up. And we need to be persistent. So let me just refer you to something not related to today's discussion, but this morning I happened to also moderate another webinar on disaster preparedness and disaster resilience. And we organized an international panel of speakers, including speakers from Taiwan and Chile and Indonesia and the Philippines. And one thing that I was so impressed about was I asked the Taiwanese speaker to track two similar disasters over time and see what they did to learn from one disaster into another and what was the impact of that. So as it happens, there were two earthquakes in Taiwan, 25 years apart. Same magnitude, 7.2, 7.3, same location, okay, same location. In the first one, from the first to the second one, because of measures they put in place and just constant, persistent policy changes and practices over 25 years, they were able to cut the loss and damage in terms of casualties and property loss. If the 100%, based on the figure of the first earthquake, they cut it down to less than 10% by the second earthquake. But that took 25 years. So it was constantly, and persistent effort. So it just shows really there are no quick fixes. And I think we have the same problem here with the floods, that we are facing this continuous problem, and we're going to have to work very hard to solve the problem. But I think you have outlined, our speakers have outlined the technology, the methods, the amount of data that can be generated to help us plan, and the strategy, I think, of nature-based solutions to be able to solve these problems. So there's many more questions, and we don't have time to handle it all. We'd be here all night, but please join me, first of all, in thanking our speakers, Nathaniel von Einsiedel and Gabriel Abarquez for Inquiro. Great panel. We learned a lot today. We'd like to thank you all. We have our next lab is going to be on October 1, so that's next week, I think. October 1, it's going to be on EVs. And it'll be in a different venue. We're going to be at Ayala Tower 2. You do need to reserve and reconfirm to be able to be admitted into the building. But we will also be available on Zoom and on Facebook. So we'd like to invite you there as well. And we still have, though we're coming to the end of the year, we still have a number of labs planned, including another one on circular economy and hopefully ocean plastics. We're looking at resilient infrastructure. So this is building quality, how to build quality infrastructure and quality buildings using quality materials and designs. And oh yeah, of course, we're working on a GIS day with Geodata. So for those of you interested in more mapping and technology, we would like to invite you to GIS Day, brought to you by Geodata.
We're also launching the INC.
And then we're going to have a final one on disaster resilience with the Australian Embassy and Delivery Associates. So we have a jam-packed program till the end of the year, before we all take a breather for Christmas. In the meantime, thank you very much for attending today on behalf of our partners, League of Cities, Globe, and Coca-Cola. Thank you very much for joining another Liveable Cities Lab. And I know we're going to have a photograph of everybody in the room, so don't leave right away. But right after this, we'd like to invite you for some snacks across the Fuller Hall, across the hallway. Thank you very much.